And welcome back to the Elevate and Renovate podcast. My name is Michael Kern, your design build consultant here at LBK. And today we're going to be tackling one of the most important and arguably important topics. It's budgeting. And I'm joined here today with Nick Kornea, the CEO of LBK Design Build. Nick, welcome.
How you doing, Mike?
And Nick is going to be sharing his professional insight on proper budgeting, how to plan for a project. So we'll jump into it, Nick. So let's start with some basic questions first. So when a client is planning to start budgeting for a project, what are some of the key indicators that would drive a project's overall costs one way or another?
The most obvious is going to be what people usually think of. It's materials choices. So like things that are expensive versus things that are inexpensive, builder grade versus high end. And that's certainly a piece of it, but a lot of it is attributed to the work scope and design. So for example, if we have a medium to large size kitchen, and for the most part, we're going to go ahead and just tear out the cabinets. Maybe we'll do flooring, obviously new fixtures, some paint, maybe update the lighting fixtures. That's going to be at one type of a budget level. But if we go ahead and start pulling down walls, expanding the kitchen, moving all the mechanicals, maybe moving the kitchen sink location, moving appliances, moving gas lines, that really attributes to additional cost in the budget because our trades are going to have to do extra work to make that happen.
So would you recommend that a client has a good understanding of what they want to do with their kitchen prior to talking to a contractor?
Yeah, I recommend having an overall goal in mind. Our designers will typically coach people and saying, hey, if you have any type of Pinterest board ideas, house.com type of ideas, to bring that to our meeting so we can get a general understanding of how much of an impact you want this overall design to have on the home. And then in translation, it kind of dictates how much impact it has on the overall budget of the project as well.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Very commonly what I see with a lot of clients is they don't know where to begin when it comes to even starting the budget conversation for a project because things are all over the place. One company charges a certain price and they get a completely drastic price from another company. So how would you recommend a client starts the budgeting process?
It's really easy. Just go on Google and you type in how much does it cost to do a remodel and it gives you the exact answer, right? Not so much. So there's a few things to consider. Number one, I always recommend that folks kind of consider what type of company they want to hire, because what we're doing isn't a product, it's a service. And that's the reason you can't just Google how much does it cost to do a bathroom model or kitchen model or whatever and get an exact answer or an accurate answer, because it really depends on the level of service that you're getting. So if you're going to work with a design build firm like we are, you're going to get a higher level of service. You're going to get teams of people that are working on the project versus maybe a solo general contractor who expects a design and work scope to be delivered to him so that he knows what he's doing. But, he's mainly just doing carpentry work on site, construction work on site, and there's not a lot of teamwork happening, and that's more put onto the homeowner to handle and facilitate. Okay. So let's understand the level of service that we're expecting. And then beyond that, in general, there's, I think, about one really reliable source, in my professional opinion, for budgeting. Remodeling Magazine puts out a cost versus value report every single year, and they also do it by regional market. So they have one for the U.S., they have one for the Northeast, they do have one for the Philadelphia area as well. And you can go in there and you can see projects from low level, mid level to high level regarding all types of home projects: exteriors, interiors, windows, doors, siding, bathroom, kitchen remodels, that kind of stuff. And one of the most important things to understand in those numbers as well is they typically do not, in general, they don't really include design and permitting. They're strictly focused on construction, labor, and materials. And I'm not 100% sure, so somebody would have to fact check me on this, if they include appliances. But if they do include appliances, you have to ask yourself, what type of an appliance package are they including? Are we talking about a $10,000 big box store package, or are we talking about a really high-end, Wolf, Sub-Zero, LaCorn ranges start at like $70,000 and they go up from there. So we have to consider what level of appliances we're budgeting for a kitchen remodel, for just as an example.
So it sounds like interviewing companies and just trying to figure out what type of experience you're looking to embark on when it comes to starting a project.
Yeah, if you're a homeowner and you're interviewing companies that you're considering working with, don't be afraid to ask them, like, hey, this is, send them a picture. Like, here's my home, here's my first floor, here's my mudroom, here's my kitchen. What do you think it's gonna cost to remodel it if we wanna do X, Y, and Z? They really should be able to give you a general idea of what neighborhood you're shopping. It's like buying a home.
Yeah.
If you're gonna buy a home, you reach out to a real estate agent. One of the first questions they're gonna ask you is like, what is our budget level? Are we looking at, townhomes that start at 400, 500,000, or are we looking at single family homes that maybe start at 850, 900, maybe $1 million and up? And then they're not gonna waste your time showing you homes that you're budgeted out of.
Your budget range.
Yeah, absolutely. So don't be afraid to ask.
That makes sense. So one thing that we typically see is, you ever hear the model good, fast, cheap? You can only have 2 of those options.
Right.
How does that typically play when it comes to a client starting their process and just planning budget-wise of who they're looking to hire for their next remodel?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm going to lean on the service versus product model again. So if something's going to be really good, we're talking about quality-wise, and it's going to be, instead of saying fast, let's say efficient, right? It's an efficient process. Things were done thoroughly. There was a schedule involved. It was done on time. Well, they're generally not going to be cheap. Why? Because a company that would need to deliver that type of a project is going to have to be a more robust, complex company with teams of people that are working together in harmony to make it happen that way. If something is typically cheap and fast, I think in any world, it's usually not going to be good, right? Now, there is an exception in our industry that I've seen personally for good and cheap, but it will not be fast. I've seen people hire real craftsmen, carpenters, really talented guys that kind of either work by themselves or with a helper, and they'll live on a job site, man, building out the most custom whatever, and they're there for like a year, and it comes out amazing. It's beautiful, and their overall rate, if you boil it down to per hour, per day, per week, whatever you want to boil it down to, it's considerably cheaper than hiring a company like ours to do it. The only caveat to that is that
you just need to be comfortable with them.
Yeah, I hope you like them. I hope you like them because you're going to be looking at them you're going to be looking at that person who's quite slow for a very, very, very long time. Yeah.
Very cool. And as far as when talking with a client about budgeting, what's the difference between setting a realistic budget versus more wishful thinking? How do you kind of navigate the waters when it comes to walking a client through that conversation?
For us in particular, it's quite easy. We do so many projects a year. Budgeting is something that we handle right from the start. It's part of our transparency and process that leads to a contract closing and a finished design. But again, don't be afraid to open the conversation. And in general, I can't say that there's been maybe one time actually in the last year with a client that we're still wrapping up a project with, in which they gave us a budget that was higher than would be required to actually do the job. I think that's the only one I can remember in the last 10 years at least. So in general, things do cost more than you think that they do.
And what are the 2 ways you guys typically handle heading into design for a project? Would you say it's more budget sets design, design sets budget? What's that look like?
Every once in a while, we get a client, maybe once or twice a year, that doesn't care what the budget is. They say we want it to look a certain way, or we want it to look this way. We don't care how much it costs. And in that example, the design sets the budget. The vast majority of the working world does not operate that way. And so with their projects, the budget sets design. So if we can have a firm understanding early on in our relationship of knowing what a budget ceiling is for our client, we're going to go ahead and design the project. And it's not that we're going to necessarily design it exactly to a certain price point, but we kind of know where to start. We know it's got to be around about this size. It can't go a little bit bigger because it'll go over, and we'll be able to have an idea of what level of finishes that we can put into this project as far as design is concerned.
Gotcha. So that brings up a good point. So I know the way I was raised growing up was we don't talk about money. We don't talk about how much money we make. It sounds like when you're talking to a potential client about their project, it's important that they share what they realistically would hope to spend, or just have an idea overall of what range you're looking to invest back in the project. Is that fair to say?
It is. Once in a while when we do have that occur where people really don't want to share, the overall tone coming from our side, and this might sound a little bit abrasive, is we shouldn't be working together, but we truly mean that. If you're going to invest hundreds of thousands of dollars, let's say, into a home by way of a contractor or a design build firm or whatever, you need to talk about money. That conversation cannot be swept under the rug. And if it's not addressed early on, it will lead to a falling out in the relationship. There's no reason why we can't talk about what the total project budget needs to be and then execute design and construction in that target budget. If we do it that way, we're going to have a really good working relationship. And it's been one of the keys to our success as a design build firm.
So it sounds like you value the transparency and honesty up front in those initial conversations. So with that being said, is there certain topics or certain hidden costs that a client should be aware of when it comes to how that may, affect the budget overall?
Yeah, I mean, change orders are the most obvious one. As a company, when I say as a company, when I'm talking about LBK, we try really hard to do a good job up front trying to find hidden issues, unforeseen issues, but it's impossible to see everything without doing full demolition. I can't go into a prospect's home and say, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Homeowner, we want to make sure everything's going to go 100%. So we're going to do full demolition right now, and then we'll see you later in 6 months when we come to do construction, or 8 months, or whatever it is. So that's really unrealistic. But there are usual key indicators. We'll look for air conditioning and heat registers in the wall and how they're, what direction that they're mounted. That can kind of clue us into what direction that the floor system is running in as far as the joists. We can pretty easily spot out a load-bearing wall. So these are some key things. Wall thicknesses also comes into play. If you're looking at a wall in your home and you're like, I wonder why that wall is 10 inches thick, chances are it's some sort of a chase. There's or it's structural, or it might be a chase. It might be two walls spaced out together because there's plumbing and HVAC running through it. So those are some key indicators. Beyond that, there are times where we pull things back and there was previous work done maybe 20, 30 years ago before that homeowner was in that home, and it was done incorrectly, not to code. It's a structural issue. Sometimes there could be termite damage or water damage. But I would say the number one cause for creep in work scope or in budget during a project is what I would call an additional work order. It's not a change order. We didn't run into an unforeseen issue. It's more of a, hey, while you guys are here, we were looking at that. We were wondering if you can also take care of this while you guys are here. And our answer to that is absolutely we can. And there has never been a cheaper time to do it than now. The guys are all out on site. Our tools are here. Permits are accounted for. Designs accounted for. All these things are accounted for. There's already a dumpster outside. So yes, we can do this little bit of work and add it onto the work scope.
What about contingencies? Talk to me about that.
Contingencies are great to have. I always say that it's not our job to know how much money you have to spend, right? That's not a good approach. It's more of how much money are you willing to part with or invest with into your home that you're comfortable with, right? So if you have a kitchen remodel, I'm just going to use a kitchen for example because they're so common, and your idea for a kitchen remodel is $200,000, then you should have at least $250,000 or maybe $225,000 in the bank that you're willing to part with. So I would say 10 to 15% of the total project budget. Keep that in mind as a contingency. It really doesn't go over 10% for the most part, but every once in a while it can. So keep that in mind.
So I'd say the larger the project, just put aside a little bit more.
Yes, absolutely. Really important.
Together with our experienced designers, we will design your space with confidence. Using high-end 3D design technology, we open your eyes to stunning possibilities. Our designers curate a captivating mix of selections for you to choose from based on your style and budget. Our entire design build process takes place under one roof, providing a simple, stress-free experience from start to finish. Remodel with confidence, having access to our web-based project management tool that tracks your remodel's progress. We'll present potential options for your project. We'll focus on space planning at this point and finalize your dream layout. Ready to get a glimpse of your dream space? LBK Design Build. Dream it. Build it. Love it.
So what's one way that LBK helps clients stay within budget when you're going through the design process?
Well, there's only so much we can do. There is 100% guidance involved. But we try to think in terms of what makes sense to spend more on and where it doesn't make so much sense. So, for example, if we can look at, let's use tile for an example. There's lots of times where there's really expensive porcelain or stone tile, where you can find a comparable tile that looks almost identical and it's like half the price or less. Same thing kind of exists in the world of stone. There are some pros and cons. It's not like it's an equal trade-off. But if we can sacrifice some cost and finishes, that'll allow us some budget maybe on overall design and work scope. So in other words, if there was a bigger impact, a positive impact for the project with the overall wow factor by the overall construction, that work scope and design, as opposed to how expensive your floor was or how expensive your countertops were on the kitchen cabinets, then we'll try to put guidance into that conversation.
Okay. So what would be some of the pros and cons, I guess, when it comes to setting a firm budget to start your project versus having some flexibility?
The most realistic one that I see is when folks will try to make their budget ceiling the amount of money that they have in the bank account. We talked about contingencies. Don't do that. That's not a good idea. If you only have $150,000 to work with on a project, in your bank, and the project is $150,000, wait a year, save the money, put some aside. Don't go crazy trying to push, because if we do run into legitimate problems, now it's going to be a matter of trying to play catch up to make that money up. And then the other factor is, if not necessarily on change orders, but on just the overall design aesthetic, if you're going to sacrifice what would make you 100% like a 10 out of 10 for the project, if you're letting the budget sacrifice that and it comes out to a 7 or an 8 out of 10, or in other words, if we did a project in your home, like a first floor remodel, and it included the kitchen, I'm going to use the kitchen as an example again, and 3 months after we leave, you come down in the morning, you're having a cup of coffee, and you're looking around the kitchen and you go, man, I wish we would have really done this instead. And this meaning it was a more expensive design. We don't want that. Then we feel like we failed the client. So in that instance, my advice is to wait a little bit, save some more money, or explore the avenue of finance. Maybe we supplement some of the project budget with some financing. Okay.
Well, that leads perfectly into my next question. When would you start that process as a client?
As a homeowner, I would first try to understand the overall budget of the project. So you should be doing some homework. You should be reaching out to companies that you want to work with or potentially work with. You could do your research, your cost versus value report. Maybe you could speak to friends, neighbors, family members that have done a project recently that's similar to size and scope. But getting that general understanding and then reflecting that against how much money you have to work with that's liquid. And then if there is a supplemental amount needed, then you should start exploring financing options, because it really stinks to get your hopes up as a homeowner and be like, oh, we're designing a project, it's looking great, and you're starting to close out design. Then you go look for financing and find out you don't qualify, or maybe there's not enough equity in the home yet, or the interest rates aren't great, so you don't really want to pay that much. So I think getting on top of it early is important, but not too early before you understand what the project budget is.
Understood. That makes sense. So from an ROI standpoint, how would that affect? Because a lot of people, when it comes to custom home remodeling, it's not for everybody, right? If you plan on being in the home a year or two and you plan on selling and moving, it probably doesn't make too much sense to custom home remodel. So talk to me a little bit more about the ROI and how you go through that process with a client.
Yeah, we generally advise new potential clients that if they're only going to live in the home maybe 2, 3, 4 years, don't hire us. And if you're going to do a remodel, my advisement would be you do something that's very cosmetic. And I don't want to say flip or anything like that. We're not trying to flip a home and do a poor job, just trying to sell it. But if it's small stuff, if it's curb appeal, a front door, a paint job in the house, maybe refinishing the floors. That stuff makes sense. Maybe refinishing the floors. That stuff makes sense. More so than the ROI, you'll be able to sell the home quickly. Nobody likes a house that sits in the market for 90 days, 120 days, so on and so forth. So that's our first piece of advice. Beyond that, if you're going to stay in the home 5 to 7 or 5 to 10, and beyond, then we're talking sense now, because you're going to be living there long enough that the overall work and the cost is impactful enough on your life so that you can enjoy it. Then when you do go to sell it, if it's not in the too long term, let's say it's 8 years after the remodel, it should still be pretty relevant as far as design, and you should probably be able to sell the home pretty quickly. As far as cost per square foot, this is a question that we get every once in a while by someone who's doing a good amount of homework and thinks they're onto something, but I tend to break the news to them that they're not. So ROI as far as per square foot really doesn't apply in the remodeling world. Remodeling, yeah, new building, new construction, it works. Totally different model. Most new builders are building a series of homes. Think of it like factory style, and so their pricing for lumber packages and overall materials is a little bit different than we get on the remodeling side, and then it works the same for trade partners, subcontractors, so on and so forth. Remodeling in general, it's more time consuming, and we're doing it in the home, and the whole setup is different. The level, and somebody might get mad at me for saying this, but in my opinion, the level of trades that are on site there are at a different level. They have to be, number one, when they're working with us, there's a trade partner agreement that they sign with us, so there's a set of rules they have to follow as far as how they behave on site, where they can park their truck, language that they use and cannot use, where they should go to the bathroom. Smoking is not allowed on our job sites, even on the driveway. You have to get your butt off site. But we want to be respectful of people's homes, and typically those trade partners are a different level as far as expense, but also service. They're a higher level of service. So remodeling in general costs way more to do than any new construction. So if you're looking at it from a dollar per square foot model, the math doesn't work. You should be doing a major remodel because you want to do it and you want to enjoy the space for yourself. It should be customized to your life.
Makes sense. And how long have you been doing this again, Nick?
I started when I was really young. I was in my teenage years when I started working as an apprentice. So I'm over 25 years at this point in my career.
So with your 25 years plus experience, what's one piece of advice that you would give homeowners when it comes to budgeting? When
it comes to budgeting, it always costs more than you initially think. That one example, right? But aside from that one example, I don't remember another time where somebody was like, oh, it costs exactly the amount I thought it was going to cost, or it costs way less than I thought. No, it's always more. If you're thinking 150, the project probably costs 225. If it's 225, it probably costs 285 or 300. It's just always the way it is, and it's not the consumer's fault, the homeowner's fault. There's, like we had alluded to earlier, there's not really sound information out there, and it's not because it can't be captured. It's mostly because the level of service varies so widely, and it also depends on the region of the country that impacts labor costs. You really can't get an exact answer on the cost. Yeah.
So it sounds like, just to kind of wrap everything up, it sounds like setting expectations early on is pretty important when it comes to helping a client set.
Absolutely. Yeah. We don't want clients to come on board unless they have clear expectations, and we want them to understand our clear expectations as well. This way, we both have a really great working relationship together.
Very cool. Well, Nick, that concludes today's interview. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mike.